The emergency alarm screamed to the Galactic Council's massive space station as Admiral Veltar slammed his four-fingered hand against the communication panel. His blue skin had turned pale with fear, something the other alien species in the war room had never seen before. The Zilani were known throughout the galaxy as the most peaceful race, but now their leader looked absolutely terrified. 3 more star systems are gone, Veltar announced, his voice cracking. The harvesters consumed everything. Planets, moons, even the stars themselves. Nothing remains but empty space. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the devastating truth. Where the Kepler 7 system had existed just 2 days ago, there was now nothing but a void. No debris, no radiation signatures, nothing at all. It was as if those worlds had never existed. Council Admiral Mordin, a tall gray being with large black eyes, studied the tactical data with growing horror. How is this possible? Our energy shield should have held them back for weeks, not hours. The machines learn, Veltar replied bitterly. Every weapon we fire at them, every defensive strategy we use, they adapt to it within minutes. Our plasma cannons that worked yesterday are useless today. Our shield frequencies that protected us this morning failed by evening. The war room fell silent, except for the soft humming of the station's life support systems. Representatives from dozens of alien species stared at the display, watching red markers spread across their galaxy like a disease. The harvesters had awakened from some ancient slumber, and they were consuming everything in their path to build more themselves. Dr. Kessa, the Council's chief science officer, stepped forward with her tablet. Her insect-like features twitched nervously as she delivered her report. Based on current expansion rates, they will reach the core worlds within 30 standard cycles. Our combined fleets cannot stop them. What about the warrior clans of Zephyr Prime? Asked someone from the back of the room. Their battle cruisers are the most advanced in the galaxy. Veltar shook his head sadly. Gone. The entire 4th Fleet engaged the harvesters near the Andromeda Gate yesterday. We received their final transmission this morning. The enemy had learned to turn our own weapons against us. Our ships were destroying each other while the machines watched. The weight of those words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. The 4th Fleet had been their strongest military force, equipped with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand supernovas. If they had fallen so easily, what hope did anyone else have? Admiral Mordin walked to the great window that looked out into space. In the distance, refugee ships were arriving constantly, carrying survivors from worlds that no longer existed. Millions of beings who had lost everything, fleeing an enemy that seemed unstoppable. We have no choice, he said finally. We must send out a general distress call, broadcasted on all frequencies, in every known language. Perhaps there is some civilization out there we haven't discovered yet, someone with knowledge we lack. And if there isn't, Dr. Kessa asked quietly. Mordin was quiet for a long moment. Then we evacuate what we can and hope our children find a way to survive in the dark between the stars. The communication officers began preparing the emergency broadcast while the council members discussed evacuation routes and supply distribution. But far away, in an unexplored region of space that most civilized species considered too dangerous to visit, something was listening. Hidden in the shadow of a massive gas giant, a small scout ship had been monitoring galactic communications for months. Its hull was scarred and patched, built from materials that the advanced alien civilizations would consider primitive. Inside, Captain Blake Wilson sat at his command chair, listening to the aliens' desperate plea for help. They're really in trouble this time, muttered Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez from the navigation station. His fingers danced across controls that looked ancient compared to the sleek alien technology they'd been observing. Blake nodded thoughtfully. These harvesters sound like the AI uprising on New Geneva, but worse. Adaptive learning systems that turn your own advantages against you. He paused, considering. The aliens are fighting them like they would fight other aliens. All logic and predictable tactics. Should we respond, sir? Asked Communications Officer Rita Chun. Blake stood up slowly, decision made. Send a message to Admiral Thompson. Tell him the galaxy just called for help, and it's time the universe met some Deathworlders. He smiled grimly. These machines think they've learned every possible way to fight. Let's show them what happens when you face something that doesn't follow any rules. The small human ship powered up its engines and began the journey toward the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen. The alien fleet commanders nearly choked on their breathing apparatus when a single, battered ship dropped out of hyperspace right in the middle of their formation. The vessel looked like it had been built in someone's garage using spare parts and pure determination. Its hull was covered in patches, welding marks, and what appeared to be actual scratches from combat. Unknown vessel. You have entered a restricted combat zone, Admiral Mordin transmitted, his voice filled with irritation. Retreat immediately or face destruction. The response came in clear, unaccented galactic standard. This is Admiral Jack Thompson of the Terran Defense Force. We got your message, asking for help. Figured we'd take a look. Dr. Kessa pulled up her scanner readings, her compound eyes widening in disbelief. Admiral, their ship's technology readings are primitive, carbon steel hull construction, chemical propulsion systems, and what appears to be nuclear power generation. How did they even achieve faster-than-light travel? On the bridge of his flagship, the TDF Resolute, Admiral Thompson scratched his graying beard as he studied the tactical displays. His ship's interior looked nothing like the pristine alien vessels surrounding them. Exposed pipes ran along the walls, warning labels were stuck everywhere in multiple languages, and the whole place smelled faintly of machine oil and coffee. Lieutenant Foster, what do you make of their battle formations? Thompson asked his tactical officer. Kelly Foster looked up from her console, pushing a strand of brown hair from her eyes. They're textbook perfect, sir. Every ship positioned for maximum efficiency, all weapons firing in synchronized patterns. Defensive positions calculated to the microsecond. She paused. It's exactly what any military academy would teach. Thompson nodded grimly. And that's why they're losing. Meanwhile, on the Council command ship, the alien officers were having a heated discussion about the strange newcomers. Admiral Mordin, our database has shown no record of any species called Terran, reported the intelligence officer. However, preliminary scans indicate they originate from a class, 12 Deathworld. The room fell silent. Class, 12 worlds are considered uninhabitable by galactic standards. Extreme weather, violent tectonic activity, aggressive native life, and radiation levels that would kill most civilized species within hours. No intelligent life had ever been confirmed on such a hostile planet. That's impossible, Dr. Kessel whispered. Nothing complex enough where space travel could evolve under those conditions. Admiral Thompson's voice came through the communication array again, interrupting their discussion. We've reviewed your tactical data. These harvester machines, they're adapting to your strategies in real time, correct? Yes, Mordin replied reluctantly. They learn from every engagement, making our weapons and tactics increasingly ineffective. Have you tried anything that can't be learned? Thompson asked casually. The question confused the alien commanders. What do you mean? Veltar asked. On the Resolute's bridge, Colonel Kate Mitchell joined the conversation. She was Thompson's chief strategist, a woman whose reputation for unconventional thinking had made her famous throughout human space. Your enemy is using logic to defeat logic, she explained. Every time you fire at optimal angles, it learns the optimal defense. Every time you maneuver efficiently, it calculates efficient counters. That is how warfare is conducted. Admiral Mordin replied stiffly. Optimal strategies produce optimal results. Kate laughed, a sound that made several aliens step back from their communication panels. Not where we come from. On Earth, optimal strategies get you killed. The predator that hunts in predictable patterns becomes prey. The tribe that fights the same way every time gets wiped out by the tribe that doesn't. Chief Engineer Robert Clark walked onto the bridge, carrying a wrench and what appeared to be a device held together with tape and determination. Admiral, I've rigged the sensor array to scan their adaptive systems. These harvester machines are incredibly sophisticated, but they've got one major weakness. Which is? Thompson asked. They assume their enemies are trying to win efficiently. They can't predict or counter strategies that deliberately waste resources, ignore optimal positioning, or use tactics that shouldn't work. Clark grinned. Lucky for the galaxy, humans have been doing impossible things for thousands of years. The alien fleet watched in growing amazement as more human ships began arriving. Each vessel looked different, patched together from various materials and technologies. None of them followed standard military designs. They bristled with weapons that looked crude but functional, and their energy signatures were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Admiral Thompson, Veltar transmitted hesitantly, "How many ships do you have?" Thompson's reply sent chills through the alien commanders. "Enough. But more importantly, we have something your harvesters have never faced before." He paused, looking out at the mechanical swarms in the distance. "We have centuries of experience fighting things that learn faster than we do. The difference is we learn to fight dirty." The stage was set for a battle unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The first wave of human ships dropped out of hyperspace, like a pack of wild animals descending on their prey. The alien fleet commanders watched in complete shock as vessels with names like Wolverine, Iron Maiden, and Thunderbolt scattered in every direction, completely ignoring all established military formations. Captain Ryan O'Brien stood on the bridge of the destroyer Wolverine, watching his crew prepare for battle with an enthusiasm that would have terrified any civilized species. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Danny Cooper, was literally grinning as he powered up the ship's main guns. "Target acquired, Captain," Danny reported. "That big, ugly harvester construct, dead ahead." "What are you waiting for?" Ryan laughed. "Light it up." The Wolverine's rail guns roared to life, spitting chunks of tungsten the size of telephone poles at incredible speed. The watching alien fleets gasped as the harvester machine, which had easily deflected their most advanced energy weapons just minutes before, suddenly began sparking and spinning out of control. "Impossible!" Dr. Kessel whispered from the Council command ship. "How are simple kinetic projectiles penetrating their adaptive shields?" Colonel Kate Mitchell's voice came through the communication array, filled with amusement. "Because your fancy shields are designed to stop energy. These machines learn to deflect plasma, lasers, and particle beams. But nobody taught them how to stop a big chunk of metal moving at 30% light speed." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human pilots ignored every rule of space combat, flying their fighters in patterns that made no sense. Lieutenant Jessica Rivera rolled her fighter through a corkscrew pattern she'd learned from atmospheric dogfighting, confusing the harvester drones that had been programmed to predict logical flight paths. "Why is she fly like that?" Admiral Morden asked in bewilderment. "Those maneuvers waste fuel and expose her to unnecessary risks." "Because the enemy can't predict what she's going to do next," explained Admiral Thompson. "Our pilots train by fighting each other, not computers. Every human pilot flies differently because every human thinks differently." Meanwhile, the heavy cruiser Iron Maiden was demonstrating another uniquely human approach to warfare. Captain Lisa Andrews had ordered her crew to weld metal spikes to their ship's hull and ram the harvester formations head-on. The alien machines, designed to counter sophisticated attacks, had no protocols for dealing with what was essentially a giant flying battering ram. Chief Engineer Robert Clark was having the time of his life, keeping the ship's systems running through what he cheerfully called creative maintenance. When the main power coupling exploded, he bypassed it with spare parts from the kitchen replicator. When the navigation computer crashed, he rerouted control through the entertainment system. "This is madness," observed Veltar as he watched human ships coordinate their attacks, using what appear to be random number generators and coin flips. "How can chaos defeat order?" "Because chaos is unpredictable," replied Commander Blake Wilson from a scout ship. His vessel was currently playing dead, while drifting into the middle of a harvester formation, its crew preparing to surprise the machines with weapons that shouldn't exist on such a small ship. These machines learn by observing patterns. We're not giving them any patterns to learn. The harvester constructs were beginning to show signs of confusion. Their adaptive algorithms kept recalibrating as they tried to counter human tactics that changed every few minutes. Some human ships were using chemical explosives that created unpredictable blast patterns. Others were firing kinetic weapons in seemingly random directions that somehow still managed to hit their targets. Fighter pilot Tony Martinez had figured out that if he flew his ship upside down and backwards while firing, the harvester tracking systems couldn't decide which direction he was actually moving. His wingman, Carol Henderson, was using a technique she called aggressive dodging, flying directly at enemy fire while spinning wildly, somehow managing to slip between energy blasts that should have vaporized her. How are they calculating those trajectories? Dr. Kessa demanded, her scientific mind struggling to comprehend what she was seeing. They're not calculating anything, Kate Mitchell replied. They're using intuition, experience, and pure human stubbornness. These pilots have been in situations where one wrong move meant death. They've learned to trust their instincts over their computers. The turning point came when the massive Harvester command ship, a construct the size of a small moon, began adapting to the human kinetic weapons. Its surface started forming thicker armor plating to deflect the tungsten rounds. That's when Chief Petty Officer Mike Johnson suggested something that made even the humans pause. What if we just rammed the biggest ship we've got right into their command center? Captain Andrews volunteered her ship without hesitation. The Iron Maiden's reactor is already damaged. Might as well make it count. The watching alien fleets could only stare in horror and amazement as humans prepared to sacrifice an entire starship just to prove a point. Captain Lisa Andrews stood on the bridge of the Iron Maiden as warning lights flashed red throughout the ship. Her reactor was failing. Her weapons were offline, and hull breaches were venting atmosphere into space. Any rational military commander would have ordered an immediate retreat. Instead, Andrews turned to her crew with a wild grin. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We're going to do something that's either brilliant or completely insane. Probably both." Her chief engineer, Tommy Walsh, looked up from his console with excitement rather than fear. "What's the plan, Captain?" "We're going to ram that command ship," Andrews said simply. "Full speed, right down their throat." The alien fleet commanders watching the battle feed fell silent. Council Admiral Mordin's breathing apparatus made strange clicking sounds as he tried to process what he'd just heard. "They cannot be serious," he whispered. "That human vessel contains over 300 crew members. They would all perish." Admiral Thompson's voice came through the communication array, calm and matter-of-fact. Captain Andrews volunteered. Her ship's already too damaged to retreat. This way, her sacrifice means something. What happened next would be talked about in alien military academies for generations. The Iron Maiden's crew worked with terrifying efficiency to convert their dying ship into a weapon. They rerouted all remaining power to the engines, sealed off damaged sections, and rigged their nuclear reactor to overload on impact. Dr. Kessa watched her scanners in fascination and horror. "Admiral Mordin, the humans are exhibiting behavior patterns we've never seen in any civilized species. They're showing no fear of death, no hesitation to sacrifice themselves." "That's because we're not civilized," replied Commander Blake Wilson from a scout ship. "We're survivors. There's a difference." The difference became crystal clear as Blake led a boarding party onto a damaged harvester construct. When their cutting tools failed to breach the adaptive armor, Sergeant Rita Flores pulled out what looked like an ancient chemical torch. The alien materials that had resisted plasma cutters for hours melted under the simple thermite reaction like butter. "How did you know that would work?" asked the Zolani observer who was monitoring the operation. Rita shrugged while she worked. "Back home, we deal with stuff that adapts all the time. Bacteria, viruses, even a weather changes faster than you can predict. You learn to have backup plans for your backup plans." Meanwhile, on the flagship Resolute, Admiral Thompson was explaining the human approach to warfare to the increasingly bewildered alien commanders. "Every other species in this galaxy evolved on stable worlds," he said, gesturing to a holographic display of Earth. "Predictable seasons, manageable weather, reasonable predators." The display showed Earth's violent history: ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and mass extinctions. Our planet tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We survived by becoming the most adaptable, stubborn, and resourceful species the universe has ever produced. Captain Ryan O'Brien demonstrated this perfectly when his ship's main computer crashed during a critical maneuver. While the alien observers expected him to retreat and reboot his systems, Ryan simply grabbed manual controls and flew his destroyer like an atmospheric fighter, using instincts and experience to navigate through the harvester formation. "This is impossible," Dr. Kessa muttered. "No organic being can process spatial coordinates that quickly without computer assistance. Tell that to our ancestors who hunted mammoths with pointed sticks," laughed Lieutenant Danny Cooper as he manually aimed his ship's weapons using nothing but eyeball targeting. "Humans have been doing impossible things since before we invented the wheel." The harvester machines were beginning to malfunction in ways their creators had never anticipated. Their learning algorithms, designed to counter logical responses, were overwhelmed by human tactics that defied all programming. Some constructs had simply stopped moving, their processors locked in infinite loops trying to understand why humans would choose inefficient strategies that somehow worked better than optimal ones. Chief Engineer Robert Clark was having a field day with capture harvester technology. While the alien scientists approached the advanced machinery with reverence and caution, Clark attacked it with a wrench, a handful of spare parts, and what he called aggressive problem-solving. "You can't just hit with a tool," protested a Zolani technician. "Watch me," Clark replied, giving a stubborn control panel a solid whack. The device immediately began functioning normally. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. The watching galaxy began to understand that they weren't just witnessing a battle. They were seeing an entirely different philosophy of existence in action. Where other species sought perfection and efficiency, humans embraced chaos and adaptability. Where others feared the unknown, humans charged forward with weapons they'd invented 5 minutes ago and tactics that shouldn't work but somehow did. The harvesters had learned to counter every form of logical warfare, but they had never faced an enemy that specialized in being illogical, unpredictable, and absolutely unstoppable. The final harvester command ship died with a sound that nobody expected: silence. After days of mechanical screaming and a constant hum of adaptive technology, the sudden quiet felt almost unnatural. The massive construct, larger than most space stations, simply stopped moving and went dark. Admiral Jack Thompson stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the last enemy signals fade from his tactical display. His uniform was torn, his face was covered in soot, and he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Around him, his crew was cheering, but Thompson just felt tired. "All human vessels, report status," he called over the communication array. The responses came in one by one. The Iron Maiden was gone, along with Captain Andrews and her brave crew. 3 other ships had been lost, and almost every remaining vessel showed battle damage. But they had won. Council Admiral Mordin's transmission came through moments later, his voice filled with something between gratitude and bewilderment. "Admiral Thompson, the Galactic Council wishes to express its deepest appreciation for your assistance. However, we must ask, how did you accomplish what our combined fleets could not?" Thompson looked out at the debris field where the harvester forces had been. Scattered among the wreckage were pieces of human ships, each fragment representing someone who had chosen to fight an impossible enemy rather than run away. "We didn't beat them with better technology," Thompson replied slowly. "We beat them by being something they couldn't understand or predict. These machines were designed to counter logical enemies. We're not logical." Dr. Kessa's scientific curiosity overrode her exhaustion. "Admiral, could you explain your tactical methodology for our military records?" Colonel Kate Mitchell answered instead, floating in the zero-gravity section of her damaged ship, while medics treated her injuries. "There is no methodology. That's the point. Every human captain made their own decisions based on their own experience and instincts. The enemy couldn't learn our patterns because we don't have any." The truth of human warfare was slowly sinking in among the alien observers. Lieutenant Danny Cooper had destroyed an entire harvester squadron by flying his fighter in a figure-8 pattern he'd learned from an ancient Earth air show. Captain Ryan O'Brien had taken out a command node by ramming it with a ship that was already exploding. Chief Engineer Robert Clark had disabled a harvester facility by introducing it to something the machines had never encountered: rust. "But surely there must be some underlying principles," insisted Admiral Mordin. "Some strategic framework we can study and implement." Commander Blake Wilson's laugh echoed through the communication array. "The principle is that there are no principles. When Plan A fails, try Plan B. When Plan B fails, make up Plan C on the spot. When everything fails, do something so crazy that it just might work." This was demonstrated perfectly when Sergeant Rita Flores explained how her boarding team had captured a harvester processing facility. We tried cutting through the doors for an hour. Didn't work. So we knocked politely and waited. The machines opened the door to investigate the anomalous behavior, and we walked right in. The alien fleets began requesting permission to examine human technology and tactics. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare, engineering, and survival itself. Human ships were held together with welds that shouldn't work, powered by reactors that violated safety regulations, and equipped with weapons that had been modified so many times that no two were exactly alike. The crews treated their vessels like living things, talking to them, cursing at them, and somehow coaxing impossible performance from machines that should have fallen apart years ago. Your maintenance procedures alone defy all known engineering principles, observed the Zolani chief technician after inspecting the Resolute's engine room. Chief Petty Officer Mike Johnson grinned while he performed what he called percussive maintenance on a stubborn control panel. That's because we don't maintain them. We convince them to keep working. Big difference. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Thompson addressed the Galactic Council one final time. We're willing to share what we know, but understand this. You can't just copy our methods. They won't work for you unless you think like us. And thinking like a human means accepting that sometimes the best solution is the one that shouldn't be possible. The implications of humanity's victory spread quickly through galactic society. Within weeks, alien military academies were teaching courses on unconventional warfare and adaptive tactical thinking. Some species began incorporating random elements into their battle strategies. Others started modifying their ships with what they politely called human-inspired design principles. But the real change was deeper than tactics or technology. The galaxy had discovered that there were other ways to think, other approaches to problems that seemed impossible. In the dark corners of space, other species on harsh worlds began emerging, inspired by humanity's example. As the human ships jumped to hyperspace, disappearing back into the unknown regions of the galaxy, they left behind a universe that would never be quite the same. The age of predictable, logical warfare was over. The age of creative chaos had begun.